I have been working with UNHCR. We call it the UN Refugee Agency for quite a long time. Once I was like you, and the next day I was sitting in the UN office dealing with media, which was not easy. So I don't look at this session as me as expert educating you on one of the most pressing issues of our time, but I will look at it more like as an interactive session because I would love to know from you also how you, the youth, look at things, because I know you look at things differently. Your time is different from when we joined the UN. Sometimes we are very old-fashioned because we have people who are still in their 60s and 70s holding the office. No criticism, don't tell them. But now is the time for artificial intelligence and innovative approaches. Unfortunately, the issues are centuries old. But through new innovative approaches, I hope we can make a difference. I'll start my presentation with a video just to set ground for how much you know about the issue of displacement. There are a lot of confusion around terminologies, refugees, displaced people, migrants, what happens when people are forced to flee their homes. We often use one phrase that no one chooses to be a refugee. It's the circumstances. Any one of us, God forbid, at any given time could become refugees. So for us, it's very important to know some of the different categories of displaced population. And I would like to know how many of you have heard about all these terminologies. How many of you knew the definition of each terminology? So how many of you actually are 100% sure that you know who is a refugee? Just raise your hand. Very few. I like your honesty. Those who raised their hand, can someone, I know it's written here, but I would like to hear from you in your words. Who did you think was a refugee or a person called refugee? Just stand up and share your definition. Anyone? Any volunteer? Come on, one day it will be you standing here. Make that the day. You?
It's somebody who left their original place of residence because their original place of residence could no longer live in it due to the humanitarian situation there.
Right, right. So refugee is a person who is forced to leave his or her country of origin and cross international borders in search of safety and security into another country. And then we will go into the definition of migrants, because many categories of people, including many of us, we are in a foreign country. Does this make us refugees? No. So refugee is a person who has fled their country and needs international protection. What does international protection mean? So according to UNHCR definition, international protection means when people are uprooted and they are forced to go to another country, they cannot exercise the same rights which they used to when they were in their own country, right? In many instances, they cannot even have access to their basic rights, for example, education, health, identification, registration. So when they are uprooted, many cannot even carry everything. I have met people right at the border between Uganda and Congo, and I have experienced firsthand what people go through. Families separated, parents didn't know where their children were, children didn't know where their parents were. Everybody, whoever could flee, they fled, leaving everything behind. So that's why it's very important for UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, to ensure that when people flee, they are provided international protection. Because of a risk of violence or persecution. And they cannot return back to their country of origin. So they need refugee status by applying for it individually or sometimes in groups. So take an example of Ukraine. When the conflict started, bulk of people started getting out of Ukraine. So it becomes very challenging for the neighboring countries to register people one by one. So they are registered in group, in bulk, which is called prima facie refugee status. And as I said, refugees do not choose to be refugees, and they cannot decide when they would like to go back. It depends on how the situation evolves in their country. The second category is asylum seeker. I am sure very few of you might have heard about it. Does anyone know who is an asylum seeker? I know the definition is here, but yes. Can you? You raised your hand. Yeah.
An asylum is someone who flees their country, but not because of a war. It's because, like, for example, it can be domestic violence. Because I know of I've watched some documentaries of females, for example, fleeing their country because they deal with violence on daily basis, and then they go to another country to seek asylum and sense of protection. Yeah, but not necessarily because of a war.
Okay, thanks. So asylum seeker, if you or someone is lucky enough to have a chance to register for refugee status. So when you flee, by you I don't mean you, I don't want any one of us to become a refugee. So when people flee their country, sometimes they are accepted as prima facie refugees. Some countries are very open to welcoming refugees, others are not. What happens, they close their borders. They don't let people come in. And then many people, so there is war. Everybody knows when there is a war, persecution, people are forced to flee. Some people flee not because their countries are in turmoil, but they are targeted because they belong to any particular group, for their sexual orientation, or for their religious belief. So those people can also claim asylum. So what happens when such people cross international borders? If a country is signatory to the 1950 Refugee Convention, countries do refugee status determination. So when people are waiting for the decision on their status, whether they can qualify to be a refugee or not, that's when they are asylum seekers. They have applied for refugee status, but they are waiting for a decision on their status. Until the status is granted, they are called asylum seekers. They should be granted the same international protection which refugees need until the time when a decision is made on their status. Is this clear? You can ask questions. You can stop me anytime you want, because I want this session really to be interactive, and if I saw anyone playing on their phone, I'm coming up to you. Okay. Then there is another category of displacement, which is called internally displaced people. Internally displaced people are those who are displaced within the boundaries of their own country. They do not cross international borders. For example, in many countries, we have seen civil war. So the war is affecting either north, south, or any one geographic location. Then those people move to safer areas within the country. They are called internally displaced people. Internal displacement is also caused by natural disasters. In the future, you would hear a lot about climate-induced refugees, because we are in a time where the climate issue is big. We see increased cyclones, earthquake, droughts, floods, which are causing displacement. As we speak, there are more internally displaced people than refugees globally. And then you have stateless people. Have you ever heard about stateless? Can someone tell me who's a stateless?
I just learned this word yesterday because some staff of UNHCR was introduced this stateless people in Thailand to me, and I donate for them. So a stateless person may means they belong to this country, but they don't have the nationality or what we call ID card. And so they may not be admitted to the government as the citizen of their country, of this country.
Right. You also wanted to say something? Yeah, right. Yes. So stateless people are those who don't have nationality from any country. They are the citizen of no country. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Once I told my friend, we work for statelessness, and he asked, what is statelessness? And I said, someone who doesn't have nationality of any country. And he said, wow, that's cool. Is it cool? It's not cool. Why? Yes, you at the back.
Because like school purposes, job purposes, medical purposes, all that kind of stuff, it can get really bad, and crossing borders, all that kind of stuff. Like even in Thailand, there's a bit of like an area where there's a lot of stateless people, and I was like, they have so much issues just getting through the border.
Exactly.
For jobs.
Exactly. So statelessness is not cool. I mean, it might sound good, I'm a global citizen because I am a citizen of no country. But when you are a citizen of no country, you cannot vote, you cannot participate in a political system, you don't have the right to access education, healthcare facilities, the right to work. Everywhere we go, if we want to travel, what do we need? A passport. Within the countries, every country has different rules. In my country, if I want to have a SIM card, I have to show my national ID card. So you have to show proof that you belong somewhere. And if you don't belong anywhere, you exist, but you don't exist. You are a faceless, nameless person who was born, who died, but nothing happened. So these are people without nationality, and I will share, I don't know if I have the exact number, but in the number of global displaced people, statelessness is also one of the main reasons. Can someone tell me, in our region, in Asia, we have one group, very prominent, that has been stateless for decades. Yes, you.
Is it the Rohingya people?
Exactly. That's the Rohingya people. How many of you have heard about the Rohingya people? Great. A good number. So Rohingya people, they originate from Myanmar, Burma, but according to Burmese constitution, if you are not from one of the recognized ethnic groups, the constitution does not give you the right to claim nationality, and Rohingya ethnic group is not recognized as an ethnic group from Myanmar. They have been stateless for generations. It's not like a decade or two. Living history, like when the borders were formed in this part of the world back in the 40s, when the United Kingdom left, they left a lot of disputes here to keep us busy, keep fighting with each other. So, so we have been fighting since then. And that's when they became stateless. And to this date, they don't have any nationality. Around 1 million of Rohingya people live in Bangladesh in refugee camps. So they are refugees and stateless. So you see, two most difficult things. You're a refugee. It's anyways difficult. And then you are stateless. When people talk about returning, they're like, return to where? We have many stateless people in Thailand, but luckily Thailand is paying a lot of attention to address the issue We, at UNHCR, we have been running a campaign that's called I Belong. When you have time, do go Google I Belong campaign. You will know more about what has happened during the past 10 years. The campaign has been going on for the past 10 years. Statelessness also happened when borders change. For example, when Soviet Union, you know, many states separated from Soviet Union, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, many people who were Soviet national then became citizens of different country, but they didn't have nationality. So it's not necessarily because of war you are sent somewhere. It's when political, you know, events change boundaries and borders, people are left with no identification. So in Thailand, at least, the success story is the government is addressing the issue, and hopefully there will be fewer or no. Sorry, should go. Okay, some of your colleagues are, I think, in another room with IOM. In the media and in many countries, people use the term migrant and refugee interchangeably. Can someone tell me the difference? If you knew the difference, yes, you.
Hello. Many migrants are those who choose to leave their home countries. So, for example, many people in South America migrate and seek asylum in the United States, while refugees don't have the choice to, don't have the luxury of choosing to leave.
That's right. Refugees don't have the luxury to choose. Migrants mostly are on the move for economic reasons. So they can choose where they want to go, when they want to go, and if they don't like it there, they can return anytime they want to. There will be no restrictions on them to return to their country of origin. But on the other hand, refugees don't choose to leave. They are forced to leave due to the fear of persecution. Sometimes they are actually the target. So they move, and they are not often able to return whenever they like. And they are, that's why, protected by the law, international law, Refugee Convention. Unfortunately, not all countries actually have ratified the 1950 Refugee Convention. That's another thing that is keeping UNHCR busy, because we are advocating with countries to sign the convention, and then that would help them, us, and people who are displaced. So, as I said, no one chooses to be a refugee, right? These are some of the reasons because of which people are forced to flee. Persecution, conflict, violence, human rights violation, disasters. So people all around the world continue to be forcibly displaced because they have no other option but to flee their homes. And unfortunately, for the past 12 years, we are seeing year on an increase in the number of refugees. As we speak, right now, the record highest number of people are displaced after the Second World War. I'll share with you the numbers because I don't want to be too focused on numbers, but it's important just for the context. So every year, UNHCR releases our flagship report, which is called Global Trends Report. Those of you who like data, statistics, numbers, you can check out the latest Global Trends Report. Every year in June, we release this report. So in my presentation, don't get confused if you see two different numbers. So 117 million people were displaced. I think this is the last count was 31st December 2023. which means 1 in 69 people globally is displaced. 1 in 69. It's a large number, it's alarming. And as I said, for the past 12 years, the trend is going up, 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 up. But right now, because these numbers are until 31st December 2023, add 4 more months, not even 7 months, we are at 120 million. 120 million people are displaced globally. Again, I won't go into detail. This is just to show you how the graph is going up gradually. It's a bad news for the world. Another thing, I have a slide on that, but I'm sure many of you probably would be interested to know. There are 2 UN agencies that are looking after refugees. One is UNHCR. The other one is, does anyone know? Someone in the back. Can someone tell me? Yes, please.
I don't know if I'll get like all the acronym right, but is it UNWRA?
That's right.
Okay.
It's called UNRWA, which is United Nations Work and Relief Agency. If you have not heard about this agency, so the mandate of this agency is to look into the issue of Palestinian refugees, solely Palestinian refugees, not refugees from Congo, Uganda, Myanmar, or any other country, because the number of Palestinian refugees is contributing to this 120 million. So UNRWA has the mandate to look after Palestinian refugees, mostly in the Middle East, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and inside Palestine, Gaza Strip, and the West Bank, whereas UNHCR looks after all other refugees, including some Palestinian refugees who are outside Gaza. We saw why people are forced to flee. What happens when people are forced to flee? Flee their countries. You will be surprised, or maybe not, that 75% of the displaced people are hosted in low or middle income countries, not rich countries. Countries like Iran and Turkey, they host the largest number of refugees, followed by Pakistan and Uganda. Again, if you know about these countries, you would know those countries are struggling to provide for their own population, but they are hosting millions of refugees for decades. So this is where the world's refugees are hosted. This is just an overview. Don't get scared of the situation in Asia, in our region. I don't want to go into the numbers specification, but in case someone is interested in data, so these are the numbers of people displaced within Asia, within our region. Asia hosts 15.7 million of the 120 million displaced population. And then you have all the countries that are hosting or producing refugees. Now, going back to UNHCR's mandate, the world is keeping us busy. Unfortunately, every day we wake up, there is a new conflict, there are more people displaced. So how do we help? As I briefly spoke about international protection in my first slide. So we provide international protection, which means the primary purpose is to safeguard the rights and well-being of displaced and to seek short and long-term solutions to help them restart their lives in normal environment. So this is what we call international protection. Then we assist governments to find durable solutions for refugees. There are 3 major durable solutions that we work on, but in addition to those, we are also looking at finding innovative approaches to to manage the issue of displacement. The 3 durable solutions are, we call them 3 Rs. Repatriation, which means people can go back voluntarily when situations are conducive for their return back to their country, but this should be strictly on voluntarily basis, and the decisions should be fully informed decision. So UNHCR help government facilitate voluntary repatriation programs where we provide refugees some basic grant. We call it reintegration grant. We provide for their transport, so when they go, they have little money to manage themselves until they are able to start their life all over again. The second R is reintegration. So in countries where many countries, unfortunately, are not very open to reintegration, that refugees could be integrated in local communities. So the local communities can tap on their potential, give them all the rights that are given to the nationals. 2 very good examples are Uganda and Iran, where refugees have the right to education, they can acquire public health insurance schemes. In Uganda, when refugees arrive, they are provided a piece of land where they can build their shelter. So those are reintegration, but every country wants refugees to go back to their country, so they are a bit strict on reintegrating them. The third R is resettlement. So when refugees cannot go back to their countries, and reintegration is also not a solution, but they have some very specific situation because of which they cannot even stay in the country of asylum. We, together with different governments, work on their resettlement. It's called third country resettlement. But unfortunately, the quotas are so limited that only 1% of the 120 million people have the chance to be resettled. And those are very specific cases based on medical conditions, on some very specific cases that have absolutely no choice to stay in the country of asylum, go back. So then they are resettled in third countries, which are mostly European countries, Australia, Canada, the US. In case you want to know more about UNRWA and UNHCR mandate, did I cover all 3? Okay, so this is UNHCR and UNRWA's mandate. The agencies were provided, our mandates were provided by the General Assembly, but which are very different. Our work is different from UNRWA. UNRWA, as I said, their operational areas are Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza, whereas UNHCR work for refugees who are outside these territories, Palestinian refugees. We do have offices in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, but we are focused more on Syrian refugees in those countries. Who do we work with? We work with governments, local or international NGOs, civil society, private sector, UN agencies, and refugee communities, because we believe you cannot decide for refugees without their participation in the decision-making process. We are no one to decide for someone else. So we want to make them part of the decision-making process. That's why we have, if in a country we have refugee camps, we have refugee committees. They proactively are engaged in all decision-making processes. This one is a sad one. And I'm sure you have come across these things. I am sure many of us at least believe one of these, no? Let's be truthful, right? We are part of some of these stereotypes. Oh, refugees, they are a burden on local economy. They are here to steal our jobs, no? They are responsible for crimes. Many people think when refugees come, crimes increase because they bring all the evil with them. But my question is, if you or I become refugee, do we automatically become criminal? Like if I become a refugee and go to, I don't know, say, any of the neighboring country, the next day, will I be like, I don't know, a thief? If you are a doctor, you become a refugee, you remain a doctor, no? You remain a banker, you remain a student. So these stereotypes really are, I would say it's violation of their human rights when we dehumanize people, when we demonize people, and give them, like, put them into these categories. Threat to peace and stability, but they are the ones running away in search of peace and stability. Why would they contribute to things which are contributing to instability? And then they are miserable and poor people. Because I think the media is to be blamed. When you see refugee influxes, when you see refugees, who do you mostly see? Poor people, right? People who are carrying, I don't know, just the clothes they are wearing on their back. And that's why countries think when refugees come, they bring poverty. But is this true? Why is it not true? Because when they flee, they bring with them more than what they have in their suitcases, if they carry any suitcases. They bring talent, they bring experience, skills, which are valuable to employers and communities, right? And fun fact, there are 2 fun facts. Do you know in the US Olympic team, 7% of the athletes are either refugees or they were children of migrants and refugees, second-generation refugees. So you see, if you label them as criminals, and then you see these real-life good examples. 7% is a big number, right? I think at some point, the French football team also consists of migrants and refugees. And it was a joke, like, there are people of color. Do you see any people of color in France? And then we have, for the second time in Olympics, a full-fledged refugee team from different countries, all the countries that you saw. These athletes are there representing their community under the Olympic flag. And guess what? 37% of these athletes originate from Asia. So, refugees, put the stereotype, throw them off the window. They need opportunities, not handouts. If we think we just deliver a tent or, I don't know, a plastic sheet or a pack of rice, no. They need opportunities. They need to be integrated, right? What do they want? They want to get an education. They want to make a living. They want to have access to healthcare facilities, just like us. So let's be, part of the change. Let's be part of the solution, not a problem. We have something called Global Compact on Refugees. Again, it's a very complicated whole process, but just to summarize it for you, the Global Refugee Compact talks about solutions, and the solution is a whole of society approach, which means one country, one government, one community, one organization are not responsible for refugees. This is a shared responsibility. We all can join hands and find solutions. So for decades, it was believed that it's a humanitarian issue. It is, but when people flee, sometimes, unfortunately, they don't have solutions, so they stay for decades. For example, Afghanistan's situation has been on for 45 years. Pakistan and Iran host Afghan refugees for 45 years. So what is required? This is no more a humanitarian issue. This becomes now a development issue. So under the Global Compact, we are bringing corporate sector, development sector, humanitarian sector, civil society, all under one roof to find solution. So when refugees are hosted somewhere, you need roads. this becomes a development issue. You need telecommunication, you need mobile phones, poles. So that's where the corporate sector can join hands with humanitarian, and when you provide assistance to far-flung areas, Uganda was a very good example. I'm quoting Uganda because I work there. When refugees from South Sudan arrived in northern Uganda, there were no mobile phone coverage. And then Airtel installed the satellite. And that's how northern Uganda got their mobile connectivity, because of refugees. So it helped not only refugees. When you help refugees, local communities also benefit. So this is Global Compact in a nutshell. This probably is the thing you have been waiting for. No? How can you get involved? There are certain things which you can do on your own, which doesn't take much. You can share a coffee with a refugee if you know someone, cook a meal together. It's a good exchange of culture and knowledge. You can volunteer to teach your language if you have them in your community, learn from them. Skill exchange is a very good way of supporting refugees and get benefited from their skills. In Pakistan, there is an area called, in southern Pakistan, it's called Chari. People had land in Chari, but they didn't know what to do with the land. When Afghan refugees came, they were like, you know what? We know how to cultivate. If you give your lands to us, we can cultivate for you. And then the profit went to both the communities 50-50. So one had the resources, the other one had the skills, and when they combined, joined their hands, it was a win-win for both communities. You can invite a refugee to your home. So no one should be scared like they look like alien. They could be anyone like us. Forge friendship. Then you can join us to make positive impact in the life of refugees. Make a donation, but I know you all are students. You probably need donation from your parents, so I won't encourage that, but you could help us maybe fundraise. And then raise awareness. You know different people. You will be, I think, pursuing careers where you can influence people. Many of you, I think it's the era of social media. Many of you are already maybe social media influencers, or you have like a wide audience who listen to you. So you can post refugee stories, just go and volunteer. And then don't ask me questions about how, but UNHCR welcome interns and UN volunteers. You can go to the site for more details on how to get internship with the UN or UNHCR, or how to volunteer. So, to cut the long story short, conclusion. Human mobility is a fact of life, and for many, a necessity. We need to recognize this reality and move from a place of fear to one of compassion. So the situation is manageable with the right system in place and sufficient political will, because this is not a humanitarian crisis. This is a political crisis. This is lack of political will to resolve many of these issues. That's it. So.